Imagine a film which is part Universal horror, part Goonies, and part The Avengers. That's how you describe a film like The Monster Squad.
Ho 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 ho! Delightfully devilish, Seymour.
Yes, everybody, welcome back to Delightfully Devilish, the show where we discuss films that all at once meet the criteria of being the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm your host, Jukebox Harry, and today we are going back and re-examining an overlooked 80s gem. The Monster Squad is a 1987 comedy horror film directed by Fred Dekker, a man with only 3 films to his directorial credit. He also made Night of the Creeps, which is a genre-bending cult classic, and RoboCop 3, which sucked. He co-wrote the film with Shane Black, who was a frequent collaborator of his. Black is notoriously the writer of the first 2 Lethal Weapon films, as well as the writer-director of Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, The Nice Guys, and Iron Man 3. Most recently, him and Fred Dekker actually teamed up to co-write The Predator, which Black directed. That movie was just awful. The first time I heard about The Monster Squad was when my stepfather recommended it to me as a kid. He grew up loving Universal horror films and saw this movie when he was young, really appreciating the fact that it actually had a child-friendly nature to it as well as being a legitimate horror film. The first time I actually got to see the film was at Monsterfest in 2018 when it played back-to-back with the documentary Wolfman's Got Nards, which actually explored how the film went on to become a huge cult classic. The documentary itself was actually directed by Andre Gower, who played the lead child in The Monster Squad, and the film itself, it was actually one of the festival highlights for me. It was a wonderfully dark and nostalgic experience, which I really enjoyed getting to see up on the big screen. And honestly, it did have me wondering how this film failed to find an audience when it was first released. The story begins 100 years in the past where Dr. Abraham Van Helsing and a small band of freedom fighters are fighting to rid the world of monsters. But they blew it. There's a man whose name keeps popping up on this series. Seriously, I've covered 3 films he directed and 1 film that he shot. Why do I keep coming back to Peter Hyams? The Monster Squad opens with the freedom fighters in question, forcing their way into Dracula's castle and killing his vampire mistress. As zombies begin to rise out of the ground, a young virgin woman reads from a scripture which causes a stone to open up a portal with such force that everyone gets sucked into it. The intro to The Monster Squad is very dark, but remember, this is the 1980s. This is when kids' movies could get away with being dark. For a reference, look at The Goonies or The Temple of Doom. In the present day, a plane carrying a coffin begins to experience some strange occurrences.
I thought they were dead.
They are.
The pilot goes back to check and finds Dracula. He attempts to stop him by dumping him with the cargo, but Dracula is ready for it. We also meet the heroes of our story. First we have Sean and Patrick, 2 boys whose obsession with monsters constantly gets them in trouble at school. There's also Horace, who everyone refers to as Fat Kid.
Tonight's question, what makes Fat Kid fat? Fat Kid?
Get out of here, EJ.
And Rudy, the cool kid from junior high who comes by to stop Horace from getting bullied.
EJ? See, you met my friend Horace.
They're all part of a club called the Monster Squad, where they share their love of monsters in Sean's treehouse. And that evening, Sean's mother gifts him a book that was apparently written by Van Helsing himself, except that he can't read it.
This is German.
That night, Sean's dad, who is a police officer, gets called in to deal with a man claiming to be a werewolf. Of all people, the actor who plays him is actually John Grease, who portrayed Uncle Rico in Napoleon Dynamite, and that film was a comedy classic. With a full moon in place, he starts going crazy.
Lock me up!
And while getting transported to the coroner's office, he begins to change, and we get a glimpse of some pretty solid makeup effects. The local museum is also having trouble.
You telling me there was this 2,000-year-old mummy here, right?
Yes, sir.
But now he's not here. He's gone. Vanished. History.
The problem is, 2,000-year-old dead guys do not get up and walk away by themselves.
Yeah, this film has a very self-aware sense of humor. It's one of the things that makes it great. Wolfman, the Mummy, and Dracula all meet up. They go to a swamp where Gill-Man, the creature from the Black Lagoon, lifts the box containing Frankenstein's monster out of the water. And Dracula brings him back to life. Honestly, seeing all these classic movie monsters together in one shot, that's pretty spectacular. If you were a young horror movie fanatic in the 1980s, this would be like the crossover equivalent of The Avengers. Universal tried and failed to make this crossover happen again recently with a Dark Universe, but everyone seems to have forgotten that this film already pulled it off. Upon hearing the news of all the strange occurrences, Sean decides to take charge.
I heard my dad talking on the telephone to a guy down at the police station. There was a guy screaming he was a werewolf, and they shot him. Look, I know this will sound pretty stupid, but a mummy disappeared from the museum tonight. Dracula might be here too. Oh man, Fat Kid farted. Can't you hold it? God damn it, would you shut up?
Sean believes that only the Monster Squad can do anything to stop them and thinks that Van Helsing's book might be the key.
But I can't read it, it's all in German.
My sister takes German in high school. Sister doesn't speak German. All she does is hang around and let guys touch her tits.
Unfortunately, Dracula is after it.
I want you to find them and take the diary. If they do not cooperate, you will kill them.
The squad goes to their scary German neighbor's house, who turns out to be a sweet old guy who treats them to pie and Pepsi. I get the obvious product placement, but who drinks Pepsi with pie? You know, you're supposed to have a palate cleanser, that's why coffee goes with it. He tells them that Van Helsing's diary speaks of the powers of good and evil coming into balance every 100 years, and a special amulet of concentrated good exists that fends off evil spirits.
Once every 100 years, at the stroke of midnight, the amulet becomes vulnerable, and at that moment it can be shattered.
And if it is?
Then the balance between good and evil will shift, and evil will rule. A ceremony which, when followed to the letter, will open a vortex which, like a great whirlwind, can swallow the forces of evil forever.
And today's date is one of particular relevance.
100 years ago? Tomorrow night?
Oh, how convenient.
You sure know a lot about monsters.
Now that you mention it, I suppose I do.
Oh, there's something that only the adults are going to understand. That's a pretty dark, dramatic touch. While contemplating their plan, Frankenstein's monster comes to reveal himself.
It's okay, you guys. He's friends with us. Come on, don't be chicken shit.
I couldn't help but laugh here. That was just adorable. Sean's younger sister Phoebe and Frankenstein's monster are now best friends, and he becomes a part of the Monster Squad. Meanwhile, Dracula has uncovered the amulet.
And there is no one to stop us!
The next day, the Monster Squad gets prepared for the impending battle. Rudy starts making steaks in shop class as well as silver bullets, and the squad's youngest member Eugene sends a letter to the army asking for assistance. Not many things with major narrative progression actually happen until about 53 minutes into the film, when Frankenstein's monster leads the squad to the house where Dracula has taken refuge. Dracula detonates a bomb, trapping the monster and blocking the exit with debris.
What if he's dead?
Well, he's Frankenstein's monster. Being dead is half his life story. Wolfman comes in, so Horace breaks the code of men.
Wolfman's got nards. Come on!
They fall through the floor and stumble across the amulet, and in comes Dracula.
Give it to me!
That's a nice narrative touch. I actually always had the idea for a story about an Italian family working in a pizza restaurant facing the siege from impending vampires. I mean, they'd have garlic everywhere to defend themselves. It looks like Fred Decker had a similar idea. Scary German guy comes to help them, and while out on the road later, they get accosted by the mummy. But Rudy is able to snag the mummy's bandages to an arrow and use his archery skills to defeat the sucker.
See you later, Band-Aid breath.
That was too easy.
And Dracula comes to blow up the clubhouse.
Meeting adjourned.
Sean's father rocks up to try to stop Dracula, but he bombs his car, killing his partner. The moment when his partner gets killed, that's when you know things are serious.
The stakes have never been higher.
A lot of films aiming for a child-friendly audience would not actually have the conviction to kill off a character, but Fred Decker does. Honestly, I respect that. The man takes a few shots at Dracula, but naturally they do nothing.
I will have your son.
Okay, Kevin Spacey. The squad rushes to the town square where they encounter Dracula's vampiric consorts. Rudy steps up and slays two of them, one with his archery skills and the other with a more hands-on approach. Dracula flies back to town in bat form, but Sean's dad rocks up and shoots him in the wing, wounding him. This gives us a chance to see him in half-bat form. And just as he's about to blow up Dracula with some dynamite, Wolfman rocks up and starts a fight, but Sean comes to the rescue.
Hey, asshole! You look.
Unfortunately, there's only one way you can actually kill a werewolf. Patrick's older sister Lisa has chosen to read from the scripture to open the portal due to her experience in learning German, but it doesn't work.
You're not a virgin, are you? No? No, what do you mean, no? Well, Steve, but he doesn't count! Doesn't count!
Wolfman comes back and gets into a fight with the police. Rudy takes this as an opportunity to grab one of their guns and fire the silver bullet.
Bang.
Thank you.
This is a nice little touch. It's only for a brief moment, but it does remind us of the human that exists inside Wolfman. And Eugene gets an idea.
Is she a virgin?
She? A virgin?
Then Gill-Man pops out of the sewer and starts attacking the police. He begins marching towards Horace, who reaches for a shotgun. First he tries to get to safety, but the bullies who accosted him earlier are too cowardly to help, so instead we get this.
Hey, fat kid. Good job.
My name is Horace.
That is the absolute best moment in the film. That is the moment that everyone watching this film wishes that they were Horace. Fuck, that was badass. Scary German guy helps young Phoebe to read from Van Helsing's diary as Dracula approaches her, seamlessly killing every police officer that tries to stop him without so much as a flinch. He knocks down the old man and holds Phoebe in his grasp.
Give me the amulet, you bitch!
But Frankenstein's monster comes to the rescue.
Bogus!
That's got to hurt. I don't care where you're from.
Phoebe finishes chanting and the amulet opens up the portal to Limbo again. Dracula tries to drag Sean in with him, but Sean impales him with a stake before Van Helsing emerges to drag him through the portal. Frankenstein's monster gets caught in the gust. God damn it, I don't know what it is about this scene, but that moment is so fucking sentimental and heartwarming, it actually had me crying. And with everything finally at peace, the army finally reaches town.
Can somebody tell me what the Sam hell is going on around here?
Well, we can't, sir.
Who are you?
We're the Monster Squad.
He said it! He said it!
And the credits begin to roll 76 minutes in. Yeah, this is a short film. Is The Monster Squad a good movie?
Yes!
The first time I watched The Monster Squad, I got sucked in by its 80s charm. That's something that I frequently fall for. Watching it in retrospect a second and third time, I actually was able to pick apart some of the big narrative flaws. When reviewing films on Delightfully Devilish, two things that I like to actually show from the movies are the essential parts of the narrative and moments of hilarious badness. Monster Squad didn't really have any notoriously bad parts, but it also didn't have way too much in the way of essential narrative. The Monster Squad is a very low budget film, and that might be hard to believe when you look at the film's solid production values because it feels very much like an A-grade movie. Fred Dekker is a smart filmmaker because he knows how to work around this, definitely blending moments of rich horror imagery which complement the movie's production values with scenes of cheesy comedic banter between the child actors. This allows the film to be both intense and funny, but upon rewatching it I realized that this actually constituted a huge part of the film. The premise is thin, and the story doesn't really start moving until the characters actively pursue Dracula 53 minutes into the film, just 23 minutes before it ends. And if the Goonies-style child-friendly comedy in the film doesn't have you enamored, you're likely to find yourself bored just waiting for something to happen. I had mixed feelings about this in retrospect. I really enjoyed all the performances from the child actors and their comedic banter, as well as all the moments of firm horror imagery, but when it came down to it, I actually started to realize the story really wasn't going anywhere most of the time. This wasn't something that really caught me the first time I watched the movie, but I did notice that it does actually have an impact on the film's rewatch value. I'll still gladly rewatch The Monster Squad, but its issues are more notable the second time around. But despite The Monster Squad's issues with storytelling and pacing, its positive gimmicks definitely outweigh its negative. And that's because you have people working behind the camera to try to actually make this a legitimate horror film because they're big fans of that. Fred Dekker creates menacing incarnations of classic horror movie characters. Actor Duncan Rieger is a classically trained Shakespearean actor, and he approaches the role of Dracula as such. He plays the character as a sadistic menace, a cold creature of sheer fury. He looks the part perfectly and plays it just as well, making it one of the best portrayals of Dracula that I've actually ever seen. Tom Noonan also plays a perfectly solid Frankenstein's monster, playing the character in a more contrasting manner, which is more sweet and friendly but nonetheless still convincing. The makeup and prosthetics for all the monsters is one of the major highlights of the film, as are the visual effects, which are used sparingly. The costumes, settings, and cinematography are all great as well. The entire film is a solid visual experience. But what's most memorable about The Monster Squad is its tone. In the documentary Wolfman's Got Nards, fans of The Monster Squad talk about how the film played a big part in their upbringing because its child-friendly nature actually made it a more accessible horror film to them as a kid. And that part I completely got. I have a friend Tara who was trying to get into horror films but didn't want to be thrown completely off the deep end and asked me to actually help her bridge her way into horror movie cinema. And I started with Yoga Hosers because it was a ridiculous horror comedy, Phantom of the Paradise because it was a musical tragedy which also had horrific elements to it, and The Monster Squad because it so deftly blended horror with comedy. The film is a legitimate horror film with dark monsters who aren't afraid to actually kill, but the family-friendly nature of The Monster Squad makes it a whole lot more accessible. The movie is dark, but it's never bloody. All the moments of intense horror are quickly softened by a following moment of 80s humor. The comedy doesn't detract from the horror, it sticks as a separate entity so that rather than being a comedy horror film, The Monster Squad instead coexists as both a comedy film and a horror film at the same time. The tone is like a funnier and more kid-friendly version of The Lost Boys, but of course that movie is way superior to The Monster Squad. And when you consider that Fred Dekker only had $12 million to work with when he made this film, it's very impressive just how much he's achieved. He's actually come out and said that this movie is both a blessing and a curse in his career. It's a blessing because it's attained such a cultural legacy and so many people have seen it and really appreciated what he's done, but it's also a curse because its failure at box office really impacted his future prospects as a director. Like I said, he's only ever directed 3 films and the man has so much talent, so this is really sad. The Monster Squad gets 7 wolf nards out of 10. It relies on a lot of gimmicky dialogue to compensate for its low budget and very thin premise, but with the charms of a talented group of young actors as well as a director who knows how to create a lot of intense atmosphere and stylistic imagery, the Monster Squad ultimately succeeds, both as a comedy and a horror film at the same time. And that does it for today's episode of Delightfully Devilish. You guys, if there are any movies you want to see me discuss on this show, please leave them in the comment section below. If you want to see more episodes of this show, please hit that subscribe button. Otherwise, until next time, I am your host, Jukebox Harry. Peace.
My name is Horace.